For 10 years, I cared for an elderly man named Walter Bennett. To most people in town, Walter was known as the grumpy old widower who complained about everything: the weather, the food, the news, and sometimes even the birds singing outside his window. His children rarely visited, and when they did, they usually left as quickly as possible, exhausted by his constant criticism. But I knew a different Walter. Behind the rough exterior was a lonely man whose world had slowly fallen apart after the death of his beloved wife. Every evening, I helped him prepare for bed and listened to stories of his youth, his adventures, and the life he once shared with the woman he loved. Some nights, we would sit together on the porch in complete silence, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. Walter was never the kind of man who said "thank you" often. Yet over the years, I learned to recognize his gratitude in the smallest gestures: a quiet nod, a brief smile, or his nightly question asking whether I had eaten dinner. As his health declined, I became more than his nurse. I became his companion. So when Walter passed away peacefully in his sleep, I mourned him as if he were family. His children did not. The funeral had barely ended before they began arguing over money, property, and inheritance. 3 days later, they called me back to the house. Richard, the oldest son, stood in the living room with his arms crossed. "We won't be needing your services anymore," he said coldly. I nodded. That much was expected. What I didn't expect was what came next. "You'll need to leave today." "Today?" I asked in disbelief. "Immediately." When I reminded them that they still owed me my final paycheck, Melissa barely looked up from her phone. "We'll deal with it later," she said. But I knew they had no intention of paying me. Within an hour, all of my belongings had been packed into my car. 10 years of loyalty ended with a slammed door. I drove away heartbroken, not because of the money, but because Walter deserved children who loved him more than his inheritance. 5 days later, my phone rang. Richard. I almost ignored the call. Almost. When I answered, his voice sounded completely different, shaken, afraid. "You need to come here, right now." "What happened? Just come." Then he hung up. As I drove toward Walter's house, I couldn't stop wondering if justice had finally arrived. Maybe they had discovered hidden debts. Maybe there was a legal problem with the estate. Whatever it was, Richard sounded terrified. When I arrived, all 3 children were standing inside Walter's bedroom. Their faces were pale. No one spoke. Richard simply pointed toward the bed. "Look." I knelt down and saw a small wooden box covered in dust beneath the bed frame. It looked as though it had just been discovered. On top of it sat a sealed envelope bearing my name in Walter's unmistakable handwriting. Beneath it rested a set of old brass keys. My heart began to race. "What is this?" I whispered. "We found it while moving the furniture," Richard replied. Then I noticed another note attached to the box. This one was addressed to his children. It read, "Do not open this box unless she is present. My attorney holds copies of everything inside." The room fell silent. Richard's hands trembled as he handed me the envelope. Carefully, I broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter and a single key. Attached to it was a small label, Lake Cabin. Confused, I unfolded the letter. Though shaky, the handwriting was unmistakably Walter's. "To the one person who never made me feel like a burden. You sat beside me through the long nights when sleep refused to come. You listened when nobody else had time. You treated me with dignity when I had little left to offer. My children have already inherited much. Kindness deserves its own reward. The lake cabin now belongs to you. The transfer has been completed legally and is already in your name. All documents are secured with my attorney. No one can challenge it. No one can take it away from you. Most importantly, no one can erase what you meant to me. Thank you for giving an old man back his dignity."
By the time I finished reading, tears blurred every word. The cabin, Walter's favorite place in the world, the peaceful retreat where he and his wife had spent countless summers together, the place he spoke about endlessly, the fishing at sunrise, the quiet mornings with coffee on the dock, the memories that filled every corner. And he had left it to me. Not to his children. To me. For the first time in my life, I saw Richard speechless. Melissa stared at the floor. No one had anything to say. Later, I learned that Walter had secretly met with his attorney months earlier. He had transferred ownership legally, documented every step, and stored copies of every record. He had planned everything. He knew exactly how his children would react, and he made certain they could do nothing to change it. I carefully folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. Then I picked up the cabin key, the same key Walter had carried for years. The room remained silent. Richard stood by the doorway as though searching for words. But there were none. I walked past him, past the family who had discarded me without hesitation, past the house to which I had dedicated a decade of my life. No one tried to stop me. Outside, sunlight reflected off my car windows. And for the first time since Walter's death, I smiled. Some people express love through speeches, others through gifts. Walter was never good with words, but in the end, he found his own way to say, "Thank you." As I drove toward the little cabin by the lake, I realized something beautiful. True kindness may go unnoticed for years, but sooner or later, it always finds its way back home.
If this story stayed with you, if it touched something deep inside you, please leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here.